Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
So the next thing I want to talk about is Daryl Morey, and he essentially talked about James Harden and the version of James Harden that we need to see. I think this is important. He really went out here and said something I've been preaching for months. And let's just go ahead and let's hear what he had to say about it.
I mean, I think if you were to say obviously the new players on the team, I think are two-way players and are going to set the stage, but winning the title really comes down to your best players, and probably the key things are we need Joel to yet again give us an MVP level performance. We need James to be just himself. We don't even need 5 years ago James. We need like the guy that we saw last year for most of the games. But the biggest inflection point is probably we need Maxey to take another step forward. And he can do it. He's putting the work in. Look, it's really hard. He took.
Before he gets to Maxey, man, I just want to point on what he said there about James Harden. I've been saying forever, man, we don't need Houston Harden. He went out there and said it right then and there. He said he needs to be himself. We don't need 5 years ago James. We need last year's James. We need Brooklyn James. We need the efficient James Harden. And as he'll get into more here, but I just think that's huge, man. We don't need the vintage James Harden. That Harden is long gone. We need an efficient James Harden that's going to find his teammates, knock down shots in different ways and just help make this team more coherent.
Yeah, I mean, I think people forget that when he was with Brooklyn, he was an MVP candidate. There was a long stretch of that season where people thought he was legit possibly going to win the MVP or was going to be in the discussion of winning MVP. And then even when he got to Philly, I think if you just ask Sixers fans, do you want a point guard that's going to get you 20 and 10, be great in the two-man game with Joel Embiid, help Maxey develop, be able to knock down shots, and win you a few games? Everybody would say yes. And that's exactly what James Harden was. I think a lot of the criticism around James Harden surrounded the fact that he was James Harden and not his actual play. And while I too expected a little bit more because of who he is, that's on us. We got to check our expectations and be like, yo, when you just look at it, the guy got 21 and 10. I mean, he was still, that's an elite level of play. Not many guys are going out and getting 21 and 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it just strikes me as interesting. Like you just said, it was more about the person than the play, right? And there were all these expectations when in fact we offloaded a guy that wouldn't play, that had all these troubles, and we got a player that, at one time this was a great partnership with Harden, Morey, and with good players around them. And again, they're trying to finish that business, but it's just crazy to me, how people have these crazy expectations when it's, I agree. And Morey said it in this interview at one point, there were games where he was the reason we lost. And that's true. There were also games where he showed that flash and it looked like he was somewhat healthy. And if we can just get that version and just get a more consistent, healthy James Harden with this squad, I mean, we can be a lethal team.
Right. And listen, I'm not going front. I'm not a fraud. I was somebody who was angry at the end of the season too with James Harden, but my anger came more from the fact that I felt in that last game, I feel like he didn't go out on his shield. Now, it didn't have anything to do with the player that I felt like he was or wasn't at this stage. I felt like he just give more in that game. Now, obviously, when I was emotional, but when I look back, I'm like, oh, he probably just wasn't healthy, and I get that. But like you said, the James Harden of last year, I think that's enough James Harden for us to be really, really good. And I don't look at it as we need this vintage Harden to come back or we need it. No, we need him to be in shape and we need him to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we have those two things, we're in good shape.
I don't think there's any Sixers fan out there that looked at James Harden at the end of Game 6 and said, we're happy, right? But right. I always knew that he was coming back. I knew it was very likely. And I think how this offseason played out is we both got a good end of the deal. And now he is very motivated, both for individual reasons and team reasons, to go out there and finally get over the top. He realizes this could be one of his best shots to win a championship and also kind of extend his career and make himself more money. So I just think it worked out perfect.
I think if there's anything that I kind of put on James Harden with this whole James Harden like hate train, if you will, is I do think he has to take some of the responsibility of the fact that he like the way he kind of forces himself out of situations. Like I feel like that didn't help him either, right? Like what he kind of forces himself out of Brooklyn. So when he gets here, it's kind of like, all right, this is what you wanted. Now you have to perform. Whether that's fair or not, I feel like that was also part of it. And that part of it I get. But anybody, like if you're just looking at the basketball, for people to be like, he's washed or he's not this or he's not that, from a pure basketball perspective, like, no, he was still very, very good. He might not have been the James Harden of old, but he was very good. Yeah. I just think that some of that hate probably came from the fact of, forcing out of Houston and then you force out of Brooklyn. And it's like, well, now you're where you say you want to be. It's time to perform. It just doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, I do get the point about Houston. I think when it came to Brooklyn, I think he realized who he was actually with at that point. And honestly, we heard it from him, right? He wanted to come to Philly. That was his primary destination that he wanted. But I don't know. I mean, obviously he has to show up. He has to perform. This is a huge opportunity for his career. But like Daryl Morey said, I'm glad he said it. So it's not just me all the time saying it's like, we just need the 20-10 Harden, the guy that can dime people up, can draw some defenders, and can help the development of some of these other guys. Speaking of which, let's hear what Daryl Morey had to say about our young phenom, Tyrese Maxey.
So his rookie year was way ahead of schedule. His second year was way, way ahead of schedule. And to ask him to do another leap forward is asking a lot, but we do need it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does it, given how much time he puts in.
I mean, do you literally have to lock him out of the building sometimes? Because they've joked about that.
Doc has during the season. Off season, I don't think no one's locking him out. Like he can come in at 5, and obviously our staff will be here with him. During the season, Doc has literally had to, monitor and say, this has to be an off day, because you just need that after back-to-backs 4 and 5s, and sometimes. Players like him are so hungry to improve, need to take that step back. Yeah.
So what do you think about the leap comments and about him making a jump, in year 3? And, is that, like he said, one of the most vital elements in addition to, getting that healthy Harden back?
I'm kind of torn about it. Like, first of all, I'm glad that he said it wouldn't be fair. Like he makes a point to say it wouldn't be necessarily a fair expectation to put on him another massive jump, because he did outperform what I think we felt like he would be as a rookie. And then last year he took a massive jump. And I think that the reality is sometimes progress isn't always like a linear path. Like you don't always just take leap and leap and leap. Like sometimes you take a little bit of a step back before you take another step forward. And I think it's very possible, because I know we all see the videos of Maxey working out like a madman. I think it's possible that he can be a better player, but not necessarily take a huge statistical jump. And for me, that would be okay. Like I know some people are like, is he going to get 26 a game this year or 27 a game? Like that's a huge leap. I don't know if he's going to do that, because part of what happened last year is now everybody's circling him on their scouting reports, right? Like you still got to focus on Embiid, but it wouldn't actually surprise me if a lot of opposing coaches are looking at him as number 2 instead of Harden. Like this is the second guy we're keen on, and not James Harden. So like I'm cautiously optimistic of him taking the jump, but I don't think that our championship hopes rely on a massive leap or a huge leap from Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting comment as well. I have been saying that, I don't expect Tyrese to take a huge statistical jump. People keep asking, what does he need to work on this offseason? Like, what will be a leap for him? I think, just like you said, it's becoming a smarter player, right? Limiting the turnovers, like finding the spots better on the floor and learning how to, be consistent game in, game out. Eventually, Tyrese will be handed the keys to the car, and he's going to be that guy. Now, if he is to step up this year, and I mean, we saw glimpses of it, right? Like he's shooting from 36. I mean, he's just knocking down shots. We saw that huge game against the Raptors in the playoffs. Like he has it. And that's something we talk about a lot. Like he has that Philly dog, that heart in him. He's going to be great, but I think people again, even with like James Harden, like they expect these huge statistical jumps, but it's just about being the best fit, the best talent for the team, and letting it all mesh and come together. And you talked about Max, you talked about Embiid, Harden. First off, that's already hard enough to game plan for. How about when you throw PJ Tucker out there on both sides of the ball, you know, making things happen? How about when you throw a guy like DeAnthony Melton coming off the bench? All these guys coming together. Like if Maxey can mesh with this team and find his spots, I just think he's going to continue to develop on this trajectory we're seeing. It might not be a year 1 to year 2 jump because he went from barely playing to looking like a potential superstar. But I think if he becomes a better player overall, like he's going to be very efficient for this team.
Perfect. Perfect.